Hello, welcome. We've flipped it up a little bit as usual, or as we typically will do as a design pattern on Thursday, but we did some design pattern work on Tuesday. But we won't flip it too much because we'll also do some design pattern stuff today. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about the landscape of cybersecurity insofar as it intersects with ontological engineering, because this is a very important field when we're thinking about intelligence analysis. Cybersecurity is that another domain of the broader scale of like modern intelligence gathering, modern warfare. You saw there's like a cyber domain that we have to take very seriously, and it's quite complicated. Before we get there, let's talk about that landscape. And I'm going to do this in instead of giving you like some overviews of like cyber in some broad abstract way, I'm going to get real personal about you, not me. Starting with this, the 2012 LinkedIn hack, where passwords for 6.5 million users were stolen by some Russian cyber criminals. In 2016, LinkedIn discovered that 100 million email addresses and hash passwords had also been stolen. And in 2021, a torrent file was made available with over 700 million users, much of which could be traced back to the LinkedIn breach. This is all information about them, information from their LinkedIn profiles, things ranging from like where they lived or their actual names to things like their passwords or usernames. This is important information. I love to share the following story too that's associated with this. So I'm sure you recall that during the 2016, I think the lead up to the 2016 election, Donald Trump's Twitter was hacked at some point. It was hacked by a group of cybersecurity specialists, I believe in the Netherlands, during a cyber like security conference. They were looking at the LinkedIn data breach, and like they were like looking through the files, and they like found his name. They were looking for famous people's names, and they found his name, and they said they like saw the hash they saw the clear text password that he was associated with his LinkedIn account. It was something like MAGA 2024 or something, or MAGA 2020, something like that. And so they were like, there's no way he uses the same password for his Twitter account. And so they went and tried it, and he did. And so they got they because it was in a different geospatial area. He had to like had to do some like multi-factor authentication. But at that point, they were already like they had accessed the account effectively, and they could have spoofed it, but they got very scared because so they stopped, and they like alerted him and was like, "Hey, yeah, here's team." And they're like, change your password basically. But this is he's not alone, right? People you reuse their passwords all the time. In fact, you might think LinkedIn, your data is probably all out over the web. You probably know this. Probably it's just something you've grown accustomed to. You might think you've got no reason to worry. I bet you do reuse passwords. That's not an isolated incident. We create new accounts all the time, and we reuse passwords all the time. This top 25 most common passwords by year, according to Splash Data. Look at the top. Password. Password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many of you have used the password before?
Never.
I absolutely have.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. For stupid accounts that have false information about me. But also, how about 111 111
Oh my God.
or dragon?
What is dragon stuff?
I mean, but look, you could look through this is a hilarious list like Shadow, Master, Superman, QWERTY, 6966969, Solo, Love Me, whatever, Donald. I mean, yeah, trust no one. Perfect. 654 321 and Jesus, right? Like it's all over the place.
Less interesting on the right side.
Yeah.
They're way more interesting.
You might think our cybersecurity hygiene has improved. I love you too.
I like the word let me in.
Yeah, let me in. I'm pretty sure that's Bray Wyatt from WWE. Anyway, but like, yeah. So, okay, reusing passwords. You may still be thinking to yourself, whatever. Stupid little accounts. Maybe I have a stupid little account, like I have to sign up for something automatically, like I want to access some news article or blah blah blah. I don't know what you kids do. You have to sign up some account, use a stupid password because it doesn't matter. So here's where it gets a little more interesting. So compromising a single account is like one piece of your puzzle. If somebody's trying to access information about you, that's just a piece of you. And this little account here is like a breadcrumb to more information about you. Do you know you can sign up for loans in many places in the US with just knowing your birth date, your name, and your social security number?
That's insane.
Yeah, that's insane. It's easy to find your birth date and your name. It's also not that hard to figure out your social security number. At least you can narrow it down. There's like an ordering after a certain year based on a certain age, ordering and location information, but also just if you can access somebody's account. Sometimes they do have that information in there. And even if you can't access it directly, you reuse a password. If you use a stupid little password for this account, it's likely that you use a similar password for another account. And maybe one of those accounts has information that will open up, I don't know, information about you that can be used to answer questions. Like when you get prompted, what was your like childhood dog's name? What's your favorite football team? These are security questions we're sometimes asked. They're not that hard to figure out. You have a Facebook profile, Instagram. Maybe you include information about this in accounts that are easy to access or crack open. It's a profile, right? You find profile information about individuals and you can start sorting out who they are, how they probably likely answer questions, and they get deeper and deeper and deeper into their accounts. This is how it works. This is like the standard operating procedure. So you should be worried. You can check. You can check to see if folks have access to your information about you, or at least you can check the extent to which some of your accounts might be pwned or have information about you online. I've done some of this myself. This one has. So John Beverly, I've had this account for over 10 years because I was a graduate student here. Chegg, Cafe Press, Gravatar, MyFitnessPal, information about me, my email, IP address. As you can see here, compromised data, phone numbers, physical addresses, usernames. All that information is out there. If you know how to find it, I'll show you how to find it later. But I'm honestly surprised it's 10 years old. I'm honestly surprised it's only been appeared in 4 breaches. Breaches happen all the time. It's just a matter of when. Some other people who've been pwned. Lewis Powell, who's a faculty member here. Mark Jensen, definitely pwned. 3. David Brown, used to be a faculty member here. He's been pwned. Giacomo, wasn't as of last semester, that is, because that's when I made the slide, was not pwned. Neither was Delaney or Jaron, although these were new accounts. They're not very old. So again, it's a matter of when, not if. These are older accounts. Because I know you're not going to be able to resist, why don't you navigate just for a moment to have I been pwned and see if your accounts have been pwned.
24 times.
24 times. Matthew's already done it because I knew he couldn't resist. His account, his email address has been pwned 24 times.
I also had it back when Gmail was invitation only, so
Oh, wow. I don't even remember that.
you don't?
I didn't have an account then.
I got invited,
Ah, I see.
yeah.
I've only had an account since, I've only had a computer since like early 2000s, like 2005.
Oh, I remember how special it was when you got to get a Gmail account. It felt special.
I've been pasted 6 times.
You've been pasted 6 times.
It is,
Someone's replicated your.
no, you, hold on. I pasted information that has been pasted to a publicly facing website.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of red. Seeing a lot of red.
On my private email.
Private email.
Yeah. On my school email, no.
Your school emails are probably here because they're kind of new.
Yeah, my school is.
Your email, I got kind of.
I'm not even gonna look at mine. I'm not.
So have I been pwned is also,
That's not
Before.
That's true. That's useful. That's
So the
useful.
thing is my phone will go
Mhm.
through and say, by the way, these recent things have had.
That's
hacks."
great.
and then they make me change my password.
That's
So
great.
I changed my password. There's no way.
Oh, that's great. But remember, part of a profile. There's other stuff that's compromised, that's not your password.
Oh, yeah. When I was in the army, I got 6 letters, John.
Huh?
I
Say it
got a
again?
letter 6 times that my FS-86 was compromised
Oh, wow, jeez. How does that happen?
because foreign entities hack systems, and
Oh, yeah.
then like hundreds of thousands of people get their stuff taken. Yeah.
Jeez. Did they do in the
Yeah.
military what they do out here, which is like they just send you a free Equifax like year subscription?
No.
So like,
No,
John,
they
the,
didn't.
the data in Have I Been Pwned is a subset of the data that's out there. So there's a lot of that stuff that's not out there. So like you're saying that you haven't been, so your information's out there, whether or not it's been released
Yeah.
globally, like the Have I Been Pwned databases have been. You remember the Move It? That was, I think, last year. It hit hit the National Student Clearinghouse, which affected a lot of universities and students, but it also hit TIA-CREF, which most likely, you were involved in. Now, TIA-CREF paid, so they didn't even show up on the hacker's website.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot of, your social security number is out there, and your date of birth and things like that. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
Well, think about what's in an FS-86.
Jay, good
Like
Lord.
90 pages.
Your life. Your
Every
life.
contact like
Everything, yeah. Where you've been, hopefully everything about you. If you've
Yeah.
done it.
It was funny. I took a data management course through one of the agencies, and it was done with the professors from UNC, North Carolina. And one guy, so I always wore a Timex watch because I had to work at a skip. I couldn't wear an iWatch or anything.
Mhm.
And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I am not on the net. I live like this agrarian life, and he teaches this stuff." And then he swapped out with another professor, and he had an iPhone and he had an iWatch. And I was like asking him about it. And he goes, "Oh yeah, Professor Lee, he knows all this stuff. I know all this stuff too. I just realized that I live in the world and I can't change it."
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny because they both have the same knowledge, and they both just accepted the world in very different ways,
Yeah, that's fair. I'll get into my take on that very shortly. Before, let me direct you, linking this back to intelligence. So open source intelligence, OSINT. So this is sort of what we're talking about. Open source intelligence about you. Its intelligence can be gathered from publicly available sources like social media, print, public and government data, professional publications, commercial data, etc. Here's a nice book, one that I like, OSINT Techniques. Here's a nice show, one that I like less, Catfish, which is, if I've not told you, I just want to spread this word because I feel like this makes the show more interesting. Catfish traditionally is a show, it's I think interpreted as somebody comes over to the host and is like, "I think somebody's catfishing me." And then they do the sleuthing to figure out if that's the case. That's not how it works. The way the show works is the catfish comes to the host and says, or actually to the producers and says, "Hey, I've been catfishing this person. I really want to come clean." And they don't tell the host. He has to figure it out by working with the other person, which I think is a much more interesting premise. But for whatever reason, they don't let people know that. Anyway, he uses open source intelligence. If there's this website, Intel Techniques, that's associated with this book, by the way, I'm quite fond of this. As you can see, they have tools over the side. Just kind of a curated suite of tools. Here's a Facebook. Like if you look in Facebook and you typed in this user account name, this is what would pop up. It's Vita Longo Quoque. This is because I used to study Latin. The quote I was punning on was from Hippocrates, which is like, "Life is short, but the art's so long to learn." And he's a doctor. And I was like, "But life is long too." So that's what that means. Anyway, if you plug this in, you can populate all in that little tab, and it'll pull back all sorts of information from Facebook about me. So you can see, like overview, all that. Similarly, you can use email addresses, and it will pull, if you look, for example, looked at Mark Jensen in Google, this be what comes up, or maybe it was that over there in the corner is not a picture of him. This is not 100% accurate, but he is listed here on the Encore wiki. You can start finding it from his last commit on GitHub. You can find all sorts of information about him. And you can do it all. And so this is my wife, Holland Reicher. If you look here through True People, it returned information about her, her age, or where she lives, where she used to live. And I can say all of this is accurate, just looking at it there. And again, because I know you won't be able to resist, why don't you navigate to the OSINT website? There was the title there, Intel Techniques. You can be able, if you just Google that, you should be able to just poke around. I mean, I have to, right? Like, I know you're not gonna, I've done this lecture before, and like half, like as soon as I got this, half the class was on the computer. So just gonna lean into it.
Appreciate your patience,
Yeah.
if you wanna do.
It's interesting, right? And also it comes well sharpened that you should probably be.
It's .NET, right?
If I do this, populate it and click it out, right? And also I did the email one, and nothing else about that. Like. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Also, the reason I tried this one, I deleted my Facebook. So this is the one I deleted. So it shouldn't. Well, no, it's not.
Oh, there you go.
You can also search the Internet Archive.
Oh,
yeah.
That
Go to the third grade. Oh, no, we didn't find any. Okay, let's come down.
Thank you.
No problem.
And also incidentally, though I don't have slides about this, if you're thinking, oh, I've scraped stuff, I've deleted things about myself offline, I've dropped my Facebook account off the side of a cliff and nobody can ever find it. That's unlikely. If you look in the Internet Archive, which is a site that curates snapshots of pages intermittently across the web, it's very likely that there are snapshots of your deleted pages on the Internet Archive that you can also search. In fact, if I'm just being like a little more candid than usual in my slides, when I want to find information about people, I use these, and I also use the Internet Archive, and I do a lot of sleuthing, and I have searched all of you. Yeah, and created a bit of a profile. I do it for just about everybody I have to engage with regularly. Just
Found
to,
my MySpace page
oh,
from.
know you. Yeah, I found Jay's MySpace page. I wish he would turn the auto music off, but I do appreciate that Kiss Me every time I go to the page starts playing. Under the milky twilight. It's great. It's a great track.
You know, you had me, and then it got a little too far because I probably do have
Let's go
music.
for the left. I mean, if you find mine on MySpace, my old MySpace page, you'll see every time you go to it, it's Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem, which is just an intense
Not
track.
edgy.
It's an
Not
intense
edgy.
track to go to. You hit the page, black and red color scheme, and pretty intense.
You wouldn't find shit on mine because I had dial-up still and you couldn't use it.
That checks out.
What about comments like when you have like several?
Why is it being blacked out?
Like literal legal names.
Oh, you're in my book, which is,
Why is?
what is this? Refresh the page.
I was.
That's good.
I think I clicked Intel X.
Let's see.
Yeah.
It's Intel on Twitter.
Intel X.
Can you refresh?
Let's check the other email.
I don't know. Can you highlight some of that and see what happens?
It's not.
No. Who knows?
This is how my
What's
page
the-
is.
Maybe click about.
Oh.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm gonna be good.
You guys find anything interesting about it?
I have not found.
Nothing that I didn't know already. So.
Not as.
There's a comment I left on Armored Games 9 years ago.
Wow.
Hobo prison.
Say that louder. Go say that louder so everybody can hear.
There's a comment I left 9 years ago on Armored Games on the game Hobo Prison Brawl.
Classic.
Which one did you?
That's great. That's great.
You're just like this homeless guy and you just like fight people.
You wonder why political candidates don't do this.
That's
They
right.
do. They do.
They do.
The RNC and the DNC do it for them.
Yeah, but there's always stuff that gets through, Tim.
Mhm.
This is true.
There's no one else.
The problem is once it's out there, you don't know if somebody's ever screenshotted or not.
That's true. Or Internet Archive is taking a snapshot.
Hey, what is besides that, have I been peoned? What was the other website?
It's Intel Techniques. So I believe the name of the site.
Found my.
Oh, it's because you're on your computer. Amanda has a lockdown computer, so everything she's looking at gets black screened. That's interesting. All right, I'm gonna move on because
Did you put the link though? Wait,
Oh yeah. Would somebody mind putting a link in there?
thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm gonna move on because we could spend time doing that all day, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a taste. But please, you feel free to do this after class. I'm sure if you're anything like me, you'll spend a couple of nights sleeplessly. Oh, I loved your Pinterest boards. Like there was some of the top. In fact, I have comments though. I have some suggestions. Yeah, I mean, I have a Pinterest board.
See,
You know,
I thought you were going to have found my music that I had recorded in Nashville.
I try not to tell people what I find of theirs because I don't want them to know how deep my searches go. But I know you want to know. I know you want to know.
John, if you have some time at the end and you stop recording, I can show you some of the hacker sites and show you the data that's out there.
Oh,
But it can't be recorded. So
that will be fun. Let's hurry up and get there. Okay. So I just want to make some observations. So roughly speaking, hackers need about 15 hours to compromise the system, and defenders need about 200 to 300 days to discover a breach. These are like rough estimates. I believe it from Microsoft. So identifying vulnerabilities and potential exploits in software and hardware early and often is very important. But the variety and complexity of cybersecurity data strikes me as analogous to something like the Human Genome Project. There's just too much. Can't do it manually. Everybody knows this. It's not just an observation I've made. There's just too much going on. You can see why, right? Like hackers kind of have an advantage. Adversaries have an advantage. It's easy to get in, or easier to get in than it is to notice. And especially if you're sleuthing in a kind of clever way, you can gain persistence in the system or something and not trigger any alarms. If you know what you're doing, you can kind of sit there and watch and gather info or something like that. Or you can do something malicious. You can call attention to yourself and some like ransomwaring or something like that, which, hopefully you have like a human resources department or a customer service department that can do the massaging so you can get money out of people. It's a very, very clever operation, by the way. So, I hate it, but it's very clever. But so regardless though, a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of different systems, a lot of different architectures that fit together in different ways, some of which reveal or create gaps and that go unnoticed for 0 days or some kind of exploits and some that don't. It's just kind of like if you're trying to defend against these things, your job is quite challenging. I said it's analogous to something like a Human Genome Project, and I make that analogy for a reason. A lot of data, don't have time to curate it manually. Also, you don't want to talk past other cybersecurity specialists. There's too much at stake and too much data. So you need to get a coherent, conformant language, much like in the gene ontology situation, of course. Doing so, we should be careful that we don't create such things in an uncoordinated fashion, right? This was a hard lesson learned based on the successes of the gene ontology project, but unfortunately one that we have to reiterate again and again and again to different domains. It's very easy to create silos, whether they're in the level of data or whether at the level of like ontological representations or knowledge representations. Easy to do that. Seems like humans just want to. No, I mean, there are many reasons that it happens, but we should avoid it. Here is an example of what I have in mind. I want to just point out I like Needy a lot. She's great. She's at Rochester. She's a wonderful person. Created this malont ontology. It's ontology of malware. It's designed to provide design patterns for common malware attacks. Maybe that's what she says, but there's no description of the scope. There's no real description of any of the content. It's to my mind as a bunch of labels and silos. Like their properties, they have domains and ranges, some of them, that's great. They have no role characteristics, no logical constraints to tell you what things like belongs to means, other than it being a label. You remember that exercise I have where I say, what do you think an ocean is? And you'll come up with 6 definitions. What do you think belongs to means? Yeah. So one of the ways we get clear about this is by creating, like adding characteristics to it, providing definitions. They did, again, do domains and ranges. So, you know, attacker belongs to an attacker group. So you can suss out something there, but certainly more specification is needed. They also have no justification descriptions for instances that they have. Attacker, or, okay, we know it's an attacker. There are no definitions for attacker. I don't know what that means exactly. And that may be, you may think, okay, John, this is not for humans. This is for design patterns. Okay, well, that's usually for humans. Okay, put that aside. Maybe it's for machines. Fair enough, no logic. So the machine just sees labels. This is a silo. Again, I like Leni. She's a wonderful person, not an ontologist. Definitely identifying a bunch of labels that are useful for a malware community, but could be done better. This is what I consider, and forgive me, needy, bad ontology. How about this one? Unified cyber ontologies designed to integrate heterogeneous cyber data sets and provide a foundation for mapping cyber data to semantic web resources like the linked open data, DBpedia, and Yago knowledge base. It also maps to some top level ontologies. You see here, the unified cyber ontology has a profile for BFO. At least they say they do. You know, at least they're trying, right? Like they're making an attempt. So this is a way to get some coordination. So this is a good sign. So I don't want to knock that. They are trying to link up to a wide range of data. So it's not just a pie in the sky ontology linked up to an upper level, or at least putatively, but they're also connecting with semantic web data, like in the linked open data system or DBpedia. That's a good thing. But there's some worries that I don't think they take too or seriously enough. Right now, they're trying to like just link things, but semantic web resources vary widely in their coherence. Yago, for example, extracts content from Wikipedia's crowdsourced pages, which is then automatically annotated with ontology terms. So here's some examples. An elephant's graveyard is a mammal. A Lockheed Martin A2100 is a person, and the Bernese Mountain is a cable car.
What?
Yes. Yeah, these are just in the data set. And so since they're automatically generating or like annotating ontology, like the annotating this linked data information with ontology terms, what they're generating is an inconsistent ontology, or at least an incoherent ontology. UCO coordinates cyber data with data from other domains, but the results can't be trusted. There's and part of this, I just want to be clear. There is a lot of linked data. So it's not just that like it's incoherent here and there. There's a lot. So you got to go figure it out. You got to find it. You got to vet it. You got to identify where their incoherence is. And unfortunately, at this point, we don't have a lot of tooling to help us do that. Some teams are working on tooling to help with that because it's an issue that we're all going to have to deal with generally. But just straightforwardly generating ontology annotations for terms like that is just results in something, to my mind, that either requires so much manual labor to be useless or is largely useless. So a better one, I think, knowledge, so the Defend group at MITRE, they have a knowledge graph of cybersecurity countermeasure techniques. Their project aims at standardizing defensive cybersecurity technology vocabulary and semantic graphs for computer blah, 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 so they can relate defensive and offensive cyber techniques. It's a big scope. But, and by the way, this is what Defend stands for, Detection, Denial, and Disruption Framework for Empowering Network Defense. Yeah, it's a lot. So D3 FEND. It's a lot. They have a broad scope, but they're approaching this in a standardized way, with an eye on avoiding those problems I was just pointing to, like avoiding just creating a silo and also avoiding like the sort of linked data mess you can get into very easily if you're just doing some automated tagging. They do use linked data, though I'll show in a second. But before I get there, I just want to point out, so they define terms and relations in Defend for counter security measures, and they're based on about 500 countermeasure patents from the U.S. Between 2001 and 2018. They have cybersecurity specialists working on the teams. They have SMEs. They've done a detailed investigation of the landscape. Their graph supports queries that connect things like offensive tactics, techniques, and procedures. Here is their visualization of it. It's easier to see if you go scouring through on your own, but you'll see
There's
things.
like 100 ontologies.
Yeah, that's right. Like, and they have like disk encryption, DNS allow listing, like, and if you go click through them, they have definitions for many of them. And we'll actually walk through some in a second, but the general pattern for their RDF files or their OWL files, so the stuff you'd see in Protege, takes this form. So you have a defend thing, and it has artifacts, digital artifact or objects and digital artifacts, techniques, and defensive techniques. This is a pretty streamlined design pattern. It's a high level design pattern, but it kind of is useful for connecting all like this in an easy to understand way by pulling out some of the background graph logic. They have a core, like this is a snapshot from Protege visualization. But you can see they have like subclassing relations. They have agent relationships, mediator relations. So access has a mediator, access mediator. Offensive technique initiates access. Defensive technique may be tactically associated with offensive technique, stuff like that. So logical relationships that are machine interpretable. And this is part of a bigger ecosystem. So that defend side that links up to the offensive model, which is also developed by MITRE called the attack model. So you can think of attack and defend as the two aspects of like either like attacking systems, like how do you penetrate or access or get persistence or whatnot. And on the other side is how do you defend against that. And if you're interested, this was part of the reading towards a knowledge graph for cybersecurity countermeasures where defend was introduced. And this is actually from that paper where it's showing that are highlighting the relationship between them. And Peter and Michael are awesome. I love those guys. Peter and I look very similar, bald, beard, etc. So they have a longer term goal, and this in defend, and this is where we're going to connect up to where they're applying this to data, their knowledge representation of data. They want to create this knowledge framework to accelerate knowledge discovery across the defensive or across defensive techniques. And so I'll show you what I mean by that by spelunking a little. If we look at data dictionary. Or I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, data, what was it? Yeah, data inventory. So they have definitions for these. So man, I'm curious what you think. So I have a quibble already, as you can see at the top. So I'm not a fan of all these definitions, but they're a good start. But at least I want to highlight they have definitions. They're, that's a little bit better than Malont, which did not. But so you deal with this all the time. So what do you think a data inventory is insofar, or I guess the question, how do you feel about this definition, Amanda, data inventory?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's synonymous with data discovery.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
I also don't think that schemas get reported.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think people know what their own schemas are. There's definitely not locations. People do not have traceability evidence of their own data and where it comes from, or the changes that get done to their data before they even get it.
Sure. It's good. These are good points. Yeah, no, this is good. There are some ways to like qualify this that I might address. So they could be data inventory, could be like the point could be identifying records rather than it is in fact identifying records. It's like aimed at. Yeah. That's right. Aimed
So
at
I was part of the IC data management lexicon team. And we would build horrible definitions like this. One, it's circular because it uses, I don't know. The problem here is that you probably had a lot of different people trying to chime in and get their lines in the sand closer together. So they just lumped in a bunch of stuff. But this probably definition has a terrible scope. And this probably needs to be branched out into 6 or 7 different entities.
Certainly,
you're going to have a problem when you try to build off of this.
Yeah. No, these are good things to point out. I mean, excuse me. And as I said, so born out of like exploration of patents, but but also, as we'll see in a minute, born out of connecting up to linked data, which is where if you keep following the relationships, where these things end. So yeah, I'll follow a little bit more. We'll look at this. So digital artifact relationships they have. These are little cards, by the way. If you start clicking around, you'll see these cards on the Defend website. So they call this a defensive technique. It's a defensive technique. All right, let's continue. Data inventory, inventories, databases, data inventory, inventories, document files. So there's some relationships there.
That's not what that definition.
That's right. That's right. So check it out. Database. What do they mean by that? An organized collection of data, generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. Where databases are more complex, they're often developed using formal design and modeling techniques. So, what do you think?
So, quick question.
Uh-huh.
Is that second sentence
Mhm.
Yeah,
should you have like a modal claim in your definition where it's like, yeah, it could be more complex, it might not be more complex? Is that
Not when I create definitions.
Okay.
This might be a comment. Like that second sentence might just be a comment.
oh,
Yeah.
you mean if you had done that?
Yeah, if I had done this, I would have left that as
This
a comment.
this is circular. It's not in
Mhm.
genus species form, and it's not concise. And that second sentence, what I do, and John, you can tell me if I'm wrong. If I have a second sentence, I always ask myself, is this the start of an elucidation?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it usually is. You should be able, for anything, no matter how complex, you should be able to describe it in one sentence.
Unless it's primitive. Yeah, in which case you may
Sure,
not.
unless it's primitive, then you don't have a definition anyway.
That's right. That's exactly what
You
I
just
was.
have an elucidation
Yeah,
and
that's
example
right,
of usage and everything else. Yeah.
So, all right. So if let's just do some quick like triage here. So drop off the first a database is, right? We'll say name, database, definition, an organized collection of data generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system, period. Stop there. So genus being an organized collection of data. We might characterize this as something like an aggregate of data. All right. Generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. That would be the differentia. What do you think about the differentia?
I don't like generally.
Yeah. Well, you might ask what happened, and this is called a litmus test I use whenever I'm looking at claims like generally or modally. I look for the boundary case. I say generally means not all the time, which means, but I'm trying to create a differentia that is such that does the following work. It distinguishes this thing from other, in this case, aggregates of data or collections of data. So I ask when this is not stored and accessed electronically, because sometimes it's not, according to the definition, is it distinguished from other organized collections of data? No, it wouldn't be. Why would it be?
don't see the added value. of the
Yeah.
second sentence at all.
Well, so the second sentence I would add is like a comment. So yeah, I don't think it would do the distinguishing work. I think actually that second sentence, the formal design and modeling techniques, I actually think that should be part of the differentia. Because I think databases are designed even minimally according to some formal design and modeling technique. That's kind of like, and they're optimized for various reasons, but they have some design built into it. That's
So
why it
John,
distinguishes them from just aggregates of data.
question about definitions, right? So would you say that definitions serve one of like two purposes? One is to uniquely specify all the way down, and then another one is to broadly specify so that you can put the things you're uniquely specifying under a class.
I think that sounds right. I just want to make sure I'm tracking. So the genus, I think if we're saying the same thing or thinking about this the same way,
Yeah.
the genus it's doing that broad specification, that broad like identification. So it falls under this class. And then the differentia is what separates the thing you're talking about from all the other siblings.
Yeah.
And so, which is where the linchpin comes here, right? That litmus test is. If you say generally, that means you're implying sometimes whatever you're saying next doesn't hold. And so then you're stuck with just the genus, and you're saying this is a subclass of that genus. So And so you should be sure that if you're saying this is a subclass of this genus, that is sufficient to differentiate it from other siblings. And usually it is not, because the genus is just saying who the parent is and not distinguishing among any of the siblings. That's what the differentiate for. Do you see? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A lot
But
of fitness
I
tests.
think that's important when you're when you're building out systems and ontologies in order to understand that sometimes what you want to do is you don't want to go straight off of uh you don't want to go straight off of something that's very, very, very complex from something like information content entity.
Oh,
You want to have it in between. So like a good example of this would be something like engine,
Mhm.
which is in the artifact ontology.
Mhm.
And engine needs to be a bridge between material artifact and electric motor, heat engine, physical powered engine,
Yeah.
reaction engine, right? So because it doesn't make sense for the model to go straight from material artifact to like reaction engine, right?
Nuclear engine.
Because that's I think how we make systems that if we do want to have AI systems in the future and LLMs understand this, right?
Yep.
We want them to have that differentiate at the broader level and not just go from the broadest thing like material entity down to something really, really, really concrete.
That's absolutely right. So let me highlight. So here's another example. So this is for document file. Remember the date that was the inventorying was connected to the database and also document file. So one of a common theme through some of these definitions is that the labels sound like they're talking about what we would think of as continuant-like things, but they seem to also, rather, the definitions seem to be describing processes, which is common. The gene ontology does this, by the way, too. It talks about like, it often will use like non-gerund like words or labels to describe processes. And so there's some like disconnect. Again, it's just a labeling issue, so I don't want to hold them up here. It's a minor quibble. You can see a document is a written, drawn, presented, or recorded presentation of thoughts, usually used to describe primarily a textual file along with its structure and design. Part of this is process talk. This could be teased out a little better. And I think the culprit for these things is they're pulling from the linked data. They're pulling from places like DBpedia or specifically DBpedia. If you're not familiar with DBpedia, this is an open source linked data website, or well, I guess database that has a lot of like tooling and resources around it so you can access or extract information from the linked data. It's very big, a lot of resources about person, places, work, species, organizations, and other things. It's kind of widely used. And by linked data, I mean, it's not just like data points like Barack Obama with no connection. It's like Barack Obama was born here. So there's like logical relationships that are built in. It is generated from Wikipedia. It's updated biannually, and they essentially do something very similar to what I was describing earlier, where they're just annotating with ontology term or knowledge representation terms, Wikipedia entries. And so it changes somewhat regularly. You can go in through some of their tooling though and like search through DBpedia and also search through older versions of DBpedia, and you can cross search, so which is kind of useful. You can see here, this was actually a page that was born out of a criticism, a series of criticisms I have against DBpedia. And I just thought it was telling that the definition they have for criticism is quite bad. So I was a little punished, but it's just illustrating some of the logical structure you'd see if you went to a DBpedia page. So you could see like this page, this is a snippet of the page about criticism, and they define criticism. And they also have like Wikipedia links to other pages on DBpedia. So you can see things like literary concepts or critique of science or something like that. And if you want to see, though, instead of going into the details myself, if you want to see some of the kind of challenges that emerge when you're dealing like on the ground with DBpedia information, I'll direct you to my blog where Carter wrote a case study. It should have been called Against DBpedia, where it goes through some of the different kind of object properties that they use and how if you're trying to sort out information, it's very challenging because you don't know what object properties they use, and they use many different object properties for the same thing, and they're often conflicting. So now, how do we get around some of these challenges in terms of like the data that we see, the kind of or somewhat poor quality data that's being pulled from. But also like the interoperability challenges across these different resources. We just saw a few resources like Defend, MITRE, or they're like working with Attack and Defend in concert. But you also have things like Malont sitting out there. You also have things like the UCO sitting out there. They have content. Another silo. What do we do? Just like tell them bye and peace and never talk to them. I like Needy too much. I don't want to do that. But it's not just them. There's also the Common Core ontologies, which is modeling cyber phenomena right alongside, and they're based on BFO too. And so, you know, they're in a good place to do good work. And so when they're extending into this domain, as you know, I won't go into detail. Common Core ontologies is widely used. It's going to be even more widely used. It's already being more widely used for these reasons, among many others. There's a lot of energy behind it with some publications. There's a list of users on our webpage growing every day. And then it's CCO is part of a standardization effort for the international community around mid-level ontologies, generally speaking. So there's strong work then for making sure that at least CCO and Defend and, you know, similarly Attack are aligned. All in the interest of semantic interoperability. Fortunately, we are doing this. And by we, I mean Giacomo. But not just Giacomo, but the Defend team. So Peter and Mike and the wonderful contributors on the Slack channel. We work together, creating a mapping between Defend and CCO. So that's what's going on. It's going on now. There's already a turtle file. They've been working on it pretty regularly. They're hoping to have a release out by in a month or so. But you see here's like this is an early version, preliminary hierarchy. Where they're trying to place stuff in that Defend design pattern within the CCO and BFO hierarchy. There's also a community of interest that was set up for the DoD-IC Foundry working group. Peter is the chair. And yeah, we all kind of go to it. And well, I don't go because it's meeting like on Tuesdays when I'm teaching. But generally speaking, people go and they do this sort of work. So they're trying to work together to make this aligned so that we are on the same page. All right. Before I continue, yeah, Jay, you question?
Me?
Oh, I thought you were going to say something that's not true.
I'm just it's interesting I think this is going to be, how long do you think this is going to take? It seems like
They make good progress fast. Peter he's got a lot of energy and a lot of sponsors. And this is Giacomo's dissertation topic. And he's about halfway done with his dissertation. So
yeah.
Man, he's beast. So
I mean,
Not long.
they had digital artifact off a continuant. Why?
yeah, this is an early draft. So this was caveat, I believe this was Peter and Michael doing it by themselves because they were actually building this mapping before we got involved. And then now that we're involved, like they're cleaning it up. But this was their first stab. They were trying.
Because it seems like this is gonna lead to massive changes, like in the cyber ontology, in other ontologies also. But I mean,
yeah, I think
that would probably be under not continuant, but
sure, yeah. No, I think that's true, and I think it's as of recently been changed,
like independent continuant maybe. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I don't want to give them. Okay, that's true. So I think this was early first stab. I don't want to give them a hard time though. Like
they're working it.
They're not on top. They weren't familiar with CCO. They were trying, right? They were making an effort, and I applaud them for that. I think they did, reasonably okay. And I'll say this, and it's not just because I like Peter. This is a hard domain to model. I had so many conversations with people who in this work who confuse things like software and hardware in various ways. They put firmware under material entity.
Yep.
And then they look at you blankly when you're like, you can't hold that. What are you talking about? A patch. You're not holding a patch. And they're like, and then they just don't know what to do. And so they think of it like a bearer. They get that. You remember that trifecta we talked about information. It's like the information, the bearer, and the thing the information is about. It is this whole domain is that modeling. That's modeling just like that. And it's very hard for people to grasp. So I don't want to give them too hard of a time. and they don't have those distinctions, they've still nevertheless done an okay job, and they are like working with us to fix it and like repair it and make the distinctions that we draw. So
Now, cyber is
shade.
maybe the most difficult.
Absolutely.
It really is.
It really is. It's
You know,
tough.
you start having things like tuples, and then because you want to get the key value pairs and ordered pairs and hash buckets, and you get down rabbit holes that are really intense.
Absolutely.
Because you get away from things that you think are in IT.
Yeah.
You know, you get into things that are in theoretical math and yeah.
And if it should go to show you how hard this area is, because that I'm being so graceful or have so much grace about this, because I talk shit about everything. And I'm here like, we good, man. It's that hard. I throw shade all the time. Now, just so we are concrete about how hard this is. Information is encrypted on a solid state drive. I want to walk you through a little bit. So I want you to create a design pattern. I want you to model this phenomenon. Information encrypted on a solid state drive. But before you do that, I want to walk you through this slow. So I want you to first in your group list the material entities involved in an encryption of a hard drive. Just list them. Don't make a diagram. Don't draw arrows. Just list them off. And then I want you to list the qualities of those things. And then I want you to list the processes they participate in. Things like encrypting. And then I want you to list off the information borne by the material entities. Just create 4 lists first. Then we will draw arrows.
You want us to break up?
I'll never want to break up.
No, I mean the online people with the
Yeah, how many people are online? I haven't even looked.
I don't know.
5. You guys can hang together. Or 4, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to? Can you make sure that we can share? Because last time we could.
Absolutely.
You have to like let us be
You
able to.
guys want to take a screenshot / take a photo of this? Because I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that they can share theirs.
Oh my god, get out of here. Be super creepy. Oh wait, check. Alright, I'm good, thanks.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Let's see. Share advanced.
Who wants to drive?
All right, you can share.
I'll drive. I got a document started already.
Nice.
So we can get a head start because we know we're going to need material artifacts, but in CCO, you have something called a hard disk drive.
Right.
So you're going to have material artifact, and then under material artifact, you have information medium artifact, and then you have digital storage device,
Right.
and then you have hard drive disk, hard disk drive.
Okay, material.
So I think that's where we want to start.
It's a solid state, right?
Yeah, so under hard disk drive, if you want, you could have another one saying solid state hard disk drive.
I
That
think
would be
solid
a
state
subclass of that.
would be siblings. Isn't that right?
So let me read the definition. A digital storage device that is designed to provide long-term storage and retrieval of digital information using one or more rigid, rapidly rotating disks coated with magnetic material.
Right. So SSD, it doesn't have that moving part inside.
Yeah, so then probably what you want to do is we wouldn't want to use hard disk drive, but we would want to have something under digital storage device.
Yeah.
That would be an SSD. Yeah.
Why don't you just have a
You
hard
create
drive?
a new class. What's that, Tim?
Isn't that the hard drive?
I know, but what I'm saying is that the hard drive they have here,
Yeah.
hard disk drive in CCO,
One
isn't that. It's the one that has rapidly rotating disks. It's not a solid state drive.
Okay.
So what we would probably do is tell CCO, hey, get your act together, change your definition isn't for a hard disk drive. It's for a type of disk drive.
In the CCO, is there a definition for memory? Because a solid state drive is just like, it's just flash memory that retains.
So they have computer
Same with
memory.
flash
They
drive.
have, so under computer memory, they have cache memory and random access memory. And then they have flash drive, which is a digital storage device that is designed to store information using flash memory, have an integrated USB interface, and a removable and rewritable. And
But
then-
wouldn't it be random access then?
No, this is the thing. I think this is a great example of probably they're trying not to boil the ocean, and they had a
Mhm.
and their grant didn't require them to build out the class that we actually need for this situation. So this is a great example where we would probably extend off of BFF or off of CCO and then probably go to their GitHub and then recommend this class.
Would you recommend the class, or would you recommend changing the definition of a hard drive?
So I would recommend both, right? I would probably recommend changing the definition of a hard disk drive to something that would better suit for rigidly, rapidly rotating disks.
Well, I think it does because a hard disk drive would be like a subclass of a hard drive.
Yeah, yeah.
As it's defined, it's already accurate. There isn't one above that other than digital storage device.
Yeah. But it sounds like if we want to have something that's solid state,
Would be a sibling of
it
this.
would be a sibling of this. But what I would say is that the hard disk drive probably needs to change their RDFS label because it's technically, I think all types of hard disk drive should fall under hard disk drive if that's how you're going with your taxonomical structure. So in order for them to be able to have hard disk drive, they either need to do one of two things. Either they need to broaden their definition so that it's not so specific on a rapidly rotating disk coated with magnetic material, and then probably create another class with that type of hard disk drive, and then have a sibling class of the one that we're kind of trying to build.
So I think.
I still disagree with that, but I think we should.
I mean, I'm not an expert in IT hardware, and so if you are, I'll.
No, like HDD literally is the differentiate is the rapidly rotating disk coated with magnetic material. So this definition works for that label already.
Okay, so then you just need a sister one for an SDD. Okay.
So okay.
That's cool. That's cool. I didn't know that. So then it's correct. And then it just means that what we would probably do is go to the GitHub and say, hey, we need for SDD, right?
Yeah. Okay, so what the material entities are involved other than the hard drive?
All right, so I think that's the material entity. I think you're going to have, so here, let me look at the picture. So
Why
we
would you have
material
the
entities
digital
involved.
storage device?
Is that?
Why wouldn't you have it? Are you building out the elements of it, the taxonomical structure for it?
Well, I think we got down to where we have the SDD. So
Okay, that's okay.
The individual entity itself.
Okay.
yeah. So here, yeah.
Oh, I mean a computer. So way.
Yeah, here in chat, I'm gonna put a picture. Hold on. So just so everyone can see the structure here. All right, so that's the structure I just said. I ordered. And if we want to have a computer.
People born by the.
So maybe
both internally and externally.
So I'm looking at a
Yeah, the process.
So
I'm looking at the merged cyber ontology. Which one do you have open?
And I would use
Oh, I have everything merged.
So the one I have has hard disk drive underneath digital storage, but not computer memory.
Okay, you might have a different version of the CCO cyber ontology that I have. And that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so then we want to have a computer, which is an information processing artifact.
Also the drive.
And here, I'll put this in the chat also, so you can see it's just below this.
These are continuing.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Right, and so and then in this one, the information processing artifact again comes off a material artifact. That gets, and then inside a computer, I don't think we have to go down this far, but if we wanted to, we could have different types of computers, like laptops and stuff, and they're right there.
Like the tower?
So I think,
The one that's.
yeah, at a broad scale, I think I would assume we would want to include an agent.
That's how.
You were breaking up, I'm sorry.
I said I assume we might want to include an agent as well. But
Yeah, so I think we want to have some type of act of computing that an agent's going to do. So here, let's go look at agent.
What about like a computer programs, application softwares?
Will say that.
Let's see.
so that's up for debate. I don't think that's a material entity, first of all.
But also we're select and model the following information encrypted on a
Can be,
solid
though.
state hard drive. We need to have encryption.
Right, which is a type of program, right, or application.
It's a type of information processing, but I don't think that.
So yeah, so encryption, there's two. So you have encryption, which is a computer program execution, which is a mechanical process. So process, mechanical process, computer program execution, and then encryption is a computer program execution in which the content of an information-bearing entity is rendered unintelligible to unauthorized accessors. So we're going to have an information-bearing entity. So we know that. So we put that on the side. And then we also have encryption algorithm, which is an encoding schema, which is an algorithm, which is a directive information content entity. And that is an encoding schema that prescribes how an information content entity in some intelligible format can be converted into a format in such a way that only authorized parties can access it.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to need to have both of those things.
Coding schema, and then the thing it's encoding would be kind of information. What do we call that?
Well, I think that would be you'd have to have an information content entity and an information bearing artifact. So the information content entity is what's been concretized, and then it's been realized by an information bearing artifact, right? Which is actually like the code that you can see. Like when I type on my QWERTY keyboard and I type the word cat, it's being encoded so that I can see it as cat. So I think we need that. And then if we look at, so that's a directive information content entity, which comes from information content entity. And what I'm talking about specifically is the encryption algorithm. You're gonna have to have that. You're gonna have to have a process between the encryption algorithm.
Read the chat.
The information bearing entity that you're encoding. What was the question?
Read the chat.
Read the chat. It might be worth asking an LLM to generate this list. I can do that. Hold
Harder,
on.
not harder.
Sure. Give me 1 second.
I've got GPT-4 up. I don't know how to phrase the prompt.
Yeah, mine is kind of smart on this stuff because I've already given it a lot of laws. Hold on.
It's where the data is held. That's what you're. Okay. I started. I think if I would.
Do you want to take over the screen?
I think Even if you.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Just so extend inside of the solid state drive itself.
So like that, that's a solid state drive that and last memory is probably a
So
piece
the
somewhere.
solid state drive participates
So is that the encryption chip?
in the process that is the computer.
The data boxes
And the
is
only
where
way
I
to
was
share
flash memory
information
cells in
from
data boxes. I
computer
bet
to
flash
computer
memory cells
through
are.
the wireless network.
Well, actually, I can't say that they are.
Through the wireless and the computer network.
But also the different parts of the solid state drive participate in there.
So as we're looking at the different ways to model this through ChatGPT or whatever, for the material entities, SSDs do have hardware encryption. So there is a hardware encryption instead of a software encryption like BitLocker.
Comparing which allows the encryption on a solid state
I'm already
drive.
looking at that.
I think that's like.
Non-volatile, non-volatile,
Computer one,
typically like
There
NAND
is
flash.
this,
So
the information on computer one now is the controller, so there's the process. So what are the parts of the computer, but then how would it go?
Right, you know what I'm saying?
What are the passwords of the?
Storage transit.
Oh, man.
All right, I can share.
Right now, is this?
Yeah.
It says the process.
Not bad. All right.
So like,
The process
the memory.
interface.
I was thinking like, is there's a difference.
And then I don't think we need.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
That's.
All right, so concepts and classes we want. Material entities involved in the encryption of a hard drive. So it's saying a solid state. This is crap because it's saying a subclass off BFO object. We know it doesn't, but then but this kind of gives us a good starting spot. So solid state hard drive, encryption software, data. And then we want qualities of those materials: capacity, encryption status, and speed, process, what they participate in. So we have a process or planned process,
Yes.
and then a data storage process.
Which would be like just the writing process as opposed to.
Yeah. And then an information born by the material entities. Interesting, they used born with an E.
Oh, that's right. That's
Data
the
content, and then I've made them built a diagram, which is a total crap. But anyway, the object property in relationships between things. So we want to have things like participates in. So this links like solid state drive and encryption software to the encryption process. Has quality. So solid state drive has the capacity and has speed. Bearer of links solid state drive to the data content from information that the information content entity holds, and then realizes links process to data content, and then transforms, describe how the encryption process changes the state of the data content from unencrypted to encrypted.
The more simplified.
See if it'll show me a graph.
Yeah, my dad learns stuff, so I'm process.
I'm gonna ask him.
Yeah.
Or.
Very
special.
Wondering if this. Quite a bit about time.
12 noon on East Coast. It's really slow.
So this is ChatGPT lying to us.
Similarly, the controller retrieves the encrypted data from flash memory and sends it to the chip.
So we have a data content, encrypted, unencrypted. So basically you have capacity and speed, has quality for the solid state drive. Then you have, I can't really tell.
So now you know.
I don't know what they put between solid state and encrypted software.
Oh, look at that. I started making diagrams. Yeah, look at that.
Can't read this one. I think this is the part. So solid state drive participates in software encryption software, participates in encryption process, realizes the data content encrypted on it. I think that's a simple.
Go back up.
What's the new one it came up with?
No, this was about.
Just saying that you have data content and it's encrypted or unencrypted. And this is very, very simple. I think we would have to build this out more, but it's not a bad starting spot. I'll put this in the chat. I mean, for a simple start, that's not bad. And what that's doing too is it's really streamlining this because we were getting off basis with like the computer and stuff. And it's really simplifying this model, which is what we want to do, right? Because we want to have our models be as simple as possible so that they can be reused with other models. I think the model with using the computer between the human agent is that's a different model that you would build into this model.
I know, but they're
Agree with that?
Because
It's not that, it's the encryption.
Because in essence, we don't need a human agent in the room, and I guess we don't actually need an agent here. Well, at least ChatGPT doesn't think. It'd be interesting to hear.
I mean, not once, if we're just talking about the start of encryption.
Yeah, we're just talking about the actual model to encrypt something on a hard drive from something that was unencrypted to encrypted, vice versa. This would be the most simple model. What does everyone think about this flux capacitor? Tim?
And I guess the ability to like name the device.
Sure, looks good.
Seems basic enough.
I think that's the important thing. I think the important thing for me to learn is not to overcomplicate these models. Because at the end of the day, we want to answer that quality control question, or what's the CQ stand for? We want to answer that key question of like, what is it trying to do? And I think as human beings, we start adding more into something. And then what we realize is that like, we're really horrible at scoping things as people because we're thinking about so many different things at one given time. And that what we're actually doing is we're mapping out probably like 10 or 15 different processes in our head. We just see them all as one process. Computers are really dumb, so they need to have these simple processes.
Still has data in the first place from somewhere.
I don't know. Thoughts?
That sounds right. I mean, I don't know. I like when things are necessary.
So do we want to update this model? I can tell ChatGPT to change things or add things.
I'd be curious what it thinks about like how like the process and the software are influenced by like the speed and the capacity and all that stuff. Like what other types of relationships does it think are important?
Yeah, let me ask it why I'm gonna ask it why it didn't include.
Send me your lists and your diagrams. Send me everything, and don't change it. I just want to see, and then I'll make fun of you later. And also, if you are interested in continuing conversation, I will be holding a Thursday evening 8 o'clock session on Zoom.